Alright, chapter 13, lesson 1, volumes of prisms and cylinders. Students will be able to find the volume of prisms and cylinders. So, first, let's define what volume means. Volume is the measure of the amount of space a figure encloses, okay? The amount of space a figure encloses. So when we're talking about a prism, the volume of a prism is simply the base area, so we use a capital B for base area, times the height of that prism, where the base, remember, is always the polygon that is not the rectangle. Unless they're all rectangles, then anything could be your base. But here we have a prism, and we have a polygon on the side that is a triangle, which is not a rectangle, and then we have a rectangle here, a rectangle here, and a rectangle here. So those are lateral faces, and this is a base. Even though it's kind of on its side, we could kind of tilt it up, and then this would be the top, and this would be the bottom. So if we want to find the volume of this thing, volume equals the base area. Well, the base area in this situation is a triangle, so we're going to do the formula for a triangle, which is lowercase b, meaning the base of the triangle, times the height of the triangle, not the height of the prism. So I'm going to put a height and then put a little triangle symbol there so we know we're talking about the height of the triangle. And then we're going to multiply that by the height of the prism. So let's zoom in and see what we can find out. All right. We have a side of 12 here, and this side is 13, so that means this side is also 13. And that means we have a right triangle with a side of 12 and 13. Well, that means this side, according to the Pythagorean theorem and according to Pythagorean triples, this side is 5 centimeters. So, go over here. When we're talking about our triangle, we could say the volume equals, the triangle is 1/2. The base, we could say, is 12. And the height of that triangle, we could say, is 5. And then we want to multiply that by the height of the prism. Well, that's this thing right here. If we were to stand this thing on the base, this 10 centimeters would be the height. So we're going to multiply it by 10. All right, so we have 12 times 5, which is 60, times a half of that, which is 30. So we get a 30 here, times 10, which is 300. And we're going to say centimeters cubed. There we go. That's how we find volume of a prism. All right. For this next problem, it's kind of wordy. So let me just read it for you. It says the weight of wet snow is 0.575 times the volume of snow in cubic inches divided by 144. How many pounds of wet snow would a person shovel in a rectangular driveway 25 feet by 10 feet after 12 inches of snow have fallen? All right. First things first. These numbers, I think, are just confusing. They're trying to tell you how to convert volume of cubic inches of snow into pounds. Well, you're going to multiply by 0.575 and then divide by 144. Well, I think that that's confusing. So I went ahead and I did the math to get rid of doing two things and just figured out what I could do. Well, I found out that multiplying by 0.575 and dividing by 144 is equivalent to just dividing by this number, 250.43. So if you want to get pounds, you're going to take the volume in cubic inches and divide it by 250.43. All right, so ignore that extraneous information. I'm giving you a little bit of a shortcut here. Now, we still need to find the volume in cubic inches, but that's doable. So let's go back. Let's do our driveway here. Say I have a driveway like this, and let's say this is 25 feet, and we'll say this is 10 feet, and we know that it's got 12 inches of snow on there. So we'll say this is like a rectangular prism with a height of 12 inches. Well, before we can find volume, we got to convert to inches, because that's what we want. We want cubic inches, it says. And this says that it's 25 feet, and this says that it's 10 feet. So the actual inches would be 25 times 12, which is 300 inches. And 10 times 12 is 120 inches. So now we are going to just multiply these things together. So we would, same thing as we did before, right? We did, up here we just did base area times height. So that's the same thing, really. So what's the base area of this thing? Well, the base is 10 feet by 25 feet, or 120 inches by 300 inches. So the volume is 120 times 300. And then we're going to multiply that by the height, which is 12. And so we could kind of do this in a calculator. When you do 120 times 300, I get 36,000. And then I'm going to multiply that by 12. And I get 432,000. And what is this? Well, we had inches by inches by inches, so this is cubic inches. There's my volume. And remember, I said that I could just take the volume and divide it by 250.43. So if I was to take that 432,000 and divide it by 250.43, that should give me my pounds. So divide that by 250.43 in my calculator, and I'm getting back approximately 1725, and then about 0.03 pounds. There you go. That's how we can convert that to pounds. Now that's a little bit more tricky than normal question, but it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Once we find the volume, we can just convert it. And if you wanted to, you could have taken this volume, multiplied it by 0.575, like they said, and then divide that number by 144, and you would have gotten the same thing. But I just thought it'd be easier to just do one step instead of two. All right, let's go on to the next page. All right, so now we're going to talk about the volume of a cylinder. And interesting enough, the volume of a cylinder is actually the same thing. So it's the same basic formula. It's just the base area times the height. But the thing about a cylinder is we know that the base is always a circle. So we can do pi r squared times the height, because we already know how to find the area of a circle, pi r squared. So for a problem like this guy, we're just going to plug in the values. Here's my radius, here's my height. Let's just plug and chug. Here we go, pi. My radius is 4.6. Square it, multiply by my height, which is 12.4. And really at this stage it's a calculator thing. So I'm going to do 4.6 squared in my calculator, and then I'm going to multiply that by 12.4, and I'm going to get all of that is going to give me 262.384. And then I'm just going to multiply that by pi in my calculator, and I get that my volume is something around 824 point, we'll just say 3, and this was meters, so I'm going to say meters cubed. And there we go. That's how we find the volume of a cylinder. All right, for the next one, I'll let you try it on your own, but I will tell you this. This 13 is the diagonal, it's not the height. And remember that the 5 is the diameter, not the radius. So go ahead and try that one on your own. But I will go ahead and do it on here, so if you want to pause it and try it and see if you got the right answer, it's a good idea. Okay. All right, well, let's do it. I see a little right triangle here, 5, what, and 13. I know what it is. It's a Pythagorean triple. That must be 12, so the height is 12 inches. And the radius is half of 5, so it's 2.5 inches. So I know that volume equals pi 2.5 squared times the height of 12. Well, again, 2.5 squared in my calculator times 12 is 75. So I'm going to get 75 times pi. And I'm going to do that times pi in my calculator, and that is 230. Oops. Oh, that's ugly. 235.6. I'm going to do that again just so you can see it. 235.6. and we're inches, so we're going to do inches cubed. 235.6 inches cubed. There we go. That's what you should have got. Okay, last one. Now, I demonstrated this in class with a slinky, but basically, if you have an oblique cylinder, the volume doesn't really change because you still have a height of 9, and you still have a radius here of 4, so there's nothing really that's going to change. If I was to imagine if this was like slanted and it was like a whole bunch of slices of circles, I could still push those circles straight up so that it made a cylinder that went straight up and down. And then it would be the same volume as it is right now. So we don't really need to worry about the fact that it's oblique. All the formulas are still exactly the same. So let's do it. If you want to do it on your own, you can. I'm going to just go ahead and go for it so you could pause and see what I get. So volume equals pi radius squared times the height of 9. Okay, so volume equals 16 times 9 times pi. I'm just kind of reorganizing it to make it a little bit easier. 16 times 9 is 144 pi, and 144 times the pi button in my calculator, I got 452.4, and I'd say yards cubed. And there we go. So these problems aren't that tough. Pretty simple stuff. Just plug in the values into the formula. The trickiest thing is going to come when we don't know a value. Like here we didn't know the height, but we could use Pythagorean theorem to find it. And there's going to be other things like that where we don't know a height or we don't know the radius and we got to figure it out. But other than that, it's going to be pretty easy, pretty self-explanatory. Just plugging numbers into formulas and going for it. So I'll see you guys on the next video.